Okay, hello grade 10s. Today we're going to be continuing on with our study of biology. So today we're going to be looking at specialized animals and plant cells. So in your textbook we're looking at section 1.3, page 38 to 45. We already learned a little bit about cells yesterday. So we learned about the difference between prokaryotic and eukaryotic, plant and animal cells, and the different organelles within those cells. Today what we're going to be doing is looking at how those cells can specialize from generalized or unspecialized cells to specialized cells. All right, so what we're going to be doing today is we're going to look at cell differentiation, then we're going to look at both plant and animal cells and their different types of specialized and unspecialized cells. And then what you guys are going to be doing is you're going to be doing a small expert group where you're going to be reading in your textbook about different specialized cells and tissues and submitting that work to me on Classroom. So by the end of this little video tutorial, what you should be able to do is describe the importance of having cell specialization to support the proper functioning of the organism as a whole, compare and contrast both specialized and unspecialized cell, and describe the structure and function of specialized animal and plant cells. Okay, so one important thing to remember is every cell in your body, or every cell in the same plant or in the same animal, have the same DNA. So if I take a cell from my hair, from my skin, from my mouth, from my liver, from my bones, all of those cells have the exact same DNA. And your DNA is essentially just the instruction manual your body has to create you. Okay, so it's got the instructions to tell what color your hair is, or your eye is, or what how different diseases that you may have. Okay, everything is in your DNA. It's like the textbook that makes you you. And every single cell in your body has that exact same set of instructions. Now, they don't use all of those instructions. For example, your skin cells don't have to use the what color is your eye chapter. You can think of it in the textbook. But every cell does have all of that instructions. That's why when you're watching, say, a crime show on TV, they can take a sample from their hair or a sample from their mouth, and they can get a full picture of that individual's whole DNA profile. Okay? But every cell in your body doesn't look exactly the same. So different cells, even though they have the same instructions, will use different pieces of information from your DNA to develop themselves into different cells that have different structures and different jobs. So for example, a skin cell looks a lot different than a cell that makes up your brain and spinal cord, a neuron cell, because they do very different jobs. Epithelial cells or skin cells are there for protection. They're there to make sure that anything from outside your body can't get inside your body. So they're kind of like a brick wall. Whereas your neurons are more like a communication system. When you have thoughts in your brain, it gets sent down your spinal cord into your nerves. So I can tell the muscles in my tongue right now how to speak and what words I'm trying to say. So because they have very different jobs, they look very different. Okay? Just like different athletes may look very different. So like runners often are very small and very thin, but very muscular because they need to be very fast and agile. Whereas a linebacker in a football game is going to be a really big guy because he's got to protect the rest of his players. Okay. So the structure, what they look like, is going to be connected to their function, what their job is. Okay. So they will look different, even though they all have the same set of instructions. Just the instructions that they use or the chapters of their textbook that they're going to use is going to be slightly different. So in animal cells, every single animal cell comes from an initial group of cells that are unspecialized. Okay, and these cells are called stem cells. So these cells look very similar to those general animal cells yesterday you saw in the gizmo, or whenever you did the gizmo. Where they don't really look like anything quite yet because they don't have their job quite yet. Okay, I like to think of stem cells kind of like kindergarten students. Okay, if you have a little brother or sister or cousin in kindergarten students are kind of okay at everything, but not really great at any one thing. So a kindergarten student is going to do art, they're going to do a little bit of math, they're going to do a little bit of spelling, but they're not a great writer yet, they're not a great mathematician yet, they're not a great artist yet, but they kind of can do a little bit of everything because they're unspecialized. Okay. Then as you continue to go through school and you get into, say, high school. Next year in grade 11, you're going to be picking a lot more specialized courses. Are you going to go into the arts or the sciences or the maths or English? What business? What's your direction? And you're going to get really good at certain things, okay, as you continue on specializing in your studies. So, for example, the science teacher, um, I'm really doing very well at science. I could write a really good lab report, okay? But if you ask me to go into an English class and write, say, an essay on a Shakespeare text, I'm probably not going to be very good at that because all my training and all my specialization is in the area of science, okay? So if we both had to sit down and do a grade 10 test, you and I'd probably beat you in the grade 10 science test, but maybe you would do better than me in a grade 10 English test or a grade 10 math test because I haven't done that stuff in a very long time. And all my training has specialized me towards the sciences. Okay, so specialized cells are more like when you go into college or university or you continue your studies and you get really good at one thing. Okay, they look a lot different because they're very, very, very good at doing one job, but they may not be as good at doing other jobs. Okay, so stem cells will form into specialized cells when they're exposed to proper environmental conditions. So very early in your development, when you're still just a package full of cells in your biological mother's stomach, um, you're just going to be a group of stem cells. None of your cells really can do anything that well that yet. But as you continue your development and then eventually you're born, you're going to be made of all these different cells that have all these different special types of jobs that have developed under different environmental conditions within the womb and as you develop. Okay. So two main types of stem cells that we have. We have embryonic stem cells and adult stem cells. Embryonic stem cells are able to undergo differentiation. So they start off as this group of unspecialized cells, and over time, as they divide, they will become more and more specialized and differentiate or become different from one another as development goes on. Okay, so as more and more divisions occur, you're going to become more and more specialized. So here's like a simple picture of what we would look like pretty soon after sperm meets egg. We can see all these cells. These would all be embryonic stem cells. They're all unspecialized yet because they haven't undergone differentiation yet. They don't look like a neuron or a skin cell or a bone cell or a muscle cell yet. They're still all in their unspecialized forms. Okay. We do have some adult stem cells. Okay. That's not when you're in an embryo anymore, not when you're still like in the uterus, but when you're actually a living organism outside the body. The problem is most adult stem cells are difficult to find. They're not in the same place in every person. So if I needed a stem cell sample from myself, we wouldn't know where to look or where to find them. Okay. Most of these cells also in the adult organism are going to just be used in replacement of damaged tissue. So they will eventually specialize to help replace some of your specialized cells that have been damaged. Stem cells you may have heard of before. We hear a lot about it in the news. They're used a lot in research for possible treatment methods into different diseases like cancer, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, stroke victims, heart disease, diabetes, rheumatoid arthritis, lots and lots of other things. It is a little bit controversial, and in activity 3, you're going to be looking a little bit more into why stem cell research is a bit controversial and what some of sort of the ethical issues are surrounding stem cells. Just to give you a bit of a preview for tomorrow, and a bit of a background information before you do tomorrow's readings, the reason why sometimes it's considered, or the reason why it's considered controversial to do stem cell research is because we don't have a good access to adult stem cells. We don't know where they are. We don't know how to find them or how to use them. Often stem cells in research come from embryonic stem cells. So a few places we can get embryonic stem cells from. One, umbilical cords. So often mothers, when they're about to give birth, have the option to either save the umbilical cord in case stem cells are needed in a treatment of disease of their child in the future, or you can actually donate your umbilical cord where the stem cells from the umbilical cord are used in research for treatment of diseases. They are in the placenta as well, which is sort of the bag that the baby's in before they're born, or you can find them in the embryo itself. Okay. A lot of research stem cells actually come from embryos themselves, and why it's tricky is it often comes because you need a large volume, the embryo is destroyed in the process. So often what happens is research facilities will collect uh, embryonic stem cells from embryos, often from IVF clinics or in vitro fertilization clinics. So these are clinics where two people who want to have a baby may have eggs and sperm that have been fertilized outside of the body, and they can collect and they create these little embryos that look like this, like a very small group of cells. And then later those embryos can be implanted in the uterus of whoever's going to carry the baby, and hopefully it would develop into a viable pregnancy. The problem is what they do often is to collect the eggs, they collect a number of eggs from the mother and a bunch of sperm from the father and mix it all together so they have a number of embryos. And some of those embryos may not be used. Maybe the pregnancy becomes viable when there's still a number of embryos left behind. So instead of just keeping those embryos in a medical freezer, a lot of people they may donate them for research. Some people have ethical issues with that, though. Some people would say that's great. It's that tissue still being used. It's moving forward science. It's moving forward research. But other people would say, well, if those embryos were implanted, that may have actually been able to develop into a person. So it's unethical to just sort of throw them away because it could become a baby. So none of these are really, this is an ethical issue. There's not really a right or wrong answer, but in lesson 3, you're going to be exploring it a little bit more, looking into some of the research, looking into some of the pros and cons, and sort of seeing where you lie on this debate. Okay, not really, there's not a right answer. It's one of those things that's an opinion base, and like we said, it's science and looking at, are we using the science appropriately? Okay. Plants also have stem cells. They're not called stem cells though because they're plant cells, not animal cells. They're called meristematic cells. So right here, this word right there is meristematic. The easiest place that you can find meristematic cells in a plant is in the tips of their roots. So if this is a root that's been sort of cut down the center, right here, this group of cells would likely be meristematic cells, or in the tips of their leaves. So right here, if this is like sort of a very baby leaf bud, all these cells out here sort of developing into the leaf would likely be meristematic cells. They're also in a special layer in the stem called the cambium. It's sort of on the outside of the stem, which allows the stem to grow wider and wider and wider. So you often are seeing these in places where there's lots of rapid growth. So rapid growth of roots, of leaves, and of the stem. These are different though than animal stem cells because meristematic cells are active throughout the whole life of the plant and they're very easy to find. If we needed some meristematic cells, we would just look in the roots or in the leaves or in the cambium. We know where they are. And in the same way we said animal cells from stem cells, unspecialized cells can specialize into all these different types of cells like neurons or bone cells or fat cells or muscle cells. Plants do the same thing. They start with these unspecialized meristematic cells and they will develop into specialized cells in the plant, like their vascular tissues, what they use for transport, or ground tissue, which is similar to sort of our connective or fat tissue. And each of these types of cells are going to look differently, just like the animal cells, and they're going to act differently, just like animal cells, depending on what their job is. Okay? So when you have a group of specialized cells, so you have a group of cells all in a similar location that all do the same job, they can function together to perform a certain job. Okay? So they act together like a team. Okay, so if you're going to play soccer, you need more than just one player. If you're going to play baseball, you need more than one player. You're going to have a number of individuals all working together to accomplish the same goal. Cells can do that as well. A number of cells can work together to accomplish one goal, and we would call a group of cells all together a tissue. Okay, so cells make up tissues. Okay, if a number of cells all are together and all working together, it's called a tissue. Just like individual athletes can come together to form a team. Okay, different tissues are going to have different jobs, and they're going to each have their own important type of job in plants and animals, depending on what type of cell they are. So what you're going to be doing for the rest of today's activity is taking a look in your textbook on page 40 to 45 to explore the different types of tissues and cells that are in plants and animal cells. So if you go to Classroom, you're going to see there is a form that you can work on right here. Okay, zoom in a bit. You can see it? All right, so you're going to have a few jobs. What you're going to do is it's divided into 3. So we have our unspecialized cells. You can't see it, but I'll make this white font so you can see it. We have unspecialized cells, okay? These are covered on page 40 to 41 of your textbook, okay? We have different types of animal cells and tissues. These are found on page 42 to 43 of your textbook. We also have different types of plant cells and tissues, and these are found on page 43 to 45 of your textbook. Okay? So here's what you're going to do. You're going to go to those pages in your textbook, okay? And there's going to be information, say, on stem cells, and you're going to have to tell me where is that cell or tissue found in the plant or animal organism? What is the job of that, so the function or job of that cell or tissue? And look to see if you can see an image of the cell or tissue and what some examples are. Okay, so what are we going to do if you don't remember? You're going to go to pearsoncanada.ca/Pearson eText. Okay. You're going to go to login, register. Okay. All of you have a special number. It is posted on Classroom. You can go find it. So remember, you're all Tommy 10 text and then a number. Your number is on Classroom. Okay. And everyone's password is a capital TOMMY 10TEXT. So Tommy 10 text with a capital T. You don't need the number on the end. Okay. When you sign in, you'll be able to find all of the information in our textbook that you need to go through. Okay. And remember, we're looking at page 40 to 45 in 1.3. So we'll go here. If you go to page, we can just start at page 40. Okay, and if we look, the first one we have to talk about are stem cells. Okay, so I'm going to read through my textbook pages right here. It says embryonic and stem cells. I'm going to read through to see where can I find them, what's its job, and what some of the what a picture of it may look like. Okay. Maybe easier if you go to the 2-page reading version, okay, to find any information. Next one you have to take a look at meristematic cells, okay. Some of the pictures you can sort of take from your textbook if you want, or you can find them on Google, okay. So you're going to fill this out, and you should be able to tell me by the end of the class where each of these cells or tissues can be found, what their job is, show me a picture of what it looks like, and give me some examples, okay. So this will be today's activity to finish up. If you have any questions for me, feel free to check my office hours and send me an email. That's when you get the quickest response, but I'm also accessible by email throughout the school day. Okay, thanks so much. Hope you enjoyed today's lesson, and stay safe, stay healthy, and stay inside.